Hi, welcome in. My name is Lindsay, and you're watching Lindsay Speaks. So, I'm picking up on something very specific right away, and it feels important to say it slowly because this isn't loud energy. This is quiet, this is subtle, this is the kind of thing that sneaks up on people. I'm getting this feeling that there's something about you that has completely unsettled someone recently. And I want to be clear, this wasn't uncomfortable or bad. It was more like disorienting. Like they didn't expect to feel anything, and suddenly they did. And what I keep coming back to is your eyes. I feel like the way you look at this person is different. It's not casual, it's not empty, it's not just looking. I'm seeing eye contact that lingers just a second longer than normal. Eye contact that feels heavy, but not in a scary way. More like meaningful, like there's something being said without words. I'm feeling that when you look at them, you're not really looking at their face, you're looking past it. It's like you're looking into them, into their mood, into their emotions, into the parts of them that they don't really show other people. And I feel like you don't even do this on purpose. This isn't something you plan, this is just how you are. You feel deeply, and your eyes show it even when your mouth stays quiet. I'm getting the energy that this person noticed, maybe not right away, but they noticed. At first, I'm sensing confusion, like, why do I feel this way around them? Why does it feel intense when they look at me? It's not about attraction alone, it's not ego, it's more like curiosity mixed with something familiar they can't explain. Almost like when you hear a song and you don't remember where you heard it before, but your body recognizes it anyway. That's the feeling. I feel like underneath their confusion, there's warmth, there's comfort, there's recognition. And that recognition scared them a little at first because it didn't come from logic, it came from feeling. I'm getting that you're someone who feels a lot, but you don't broadcast it. You're not dramatic, you're not loud about emotions. You might actually come across as calm, reserved, maybe even hard to read. Some of you have what I'd call a neutral face, like a poker face, but behind your eyes, that's where everything lives. Your energy speaks before you do. I'm seeing this like imagine someone walking into a quiet room after being in chaos all day. They don't realize how tense they were until they step into the quiet. That's what your presence feels like to them. They didn't expect it, they weren't looking for it, but they felt it. I'm also picking up that this person may have been distracted when you first came into their awareness. They had things on their mind, problems, stress, maybe emotional baggage. So at first, they didn't fully understand why you stood out. But the more they caught your gaze, the more it pulled them out of their own head. It's like your eyes slowed their thoughts down. I'm seeing them thinking, why does it feel like they see me? Not just look at me, see me. And that's what changed everything, because once someone feels seen at that level, they don't forget it. Even if they walk away, even if they act normal, even if they pretend it didn't affect them, it did. And if this is already resonating, drop eye contact in the comments, hit the like button so I know I'm connecting with the right people, subscribe to Lindsay Speaks, and stay with me, because this goes a lot deeper than eye contact. What I'm really getting now is that this connection didn't begin in the mind at all. It didn't start with thoughts or logic or labels. It started somewhere much lower, much quieter. I'm feeling it in the body, in the nervous system, in that instant gut reaction people get before they even know why. I'm seeing that when you're around this person, something in them shifts automatically. Like their body responds before their brain catches up. Even if they were distracted, even if their mind was busy with stress, problems, or something heavy going on in their life, your energy cuts straight through that noise. It's like, imagine a room full of static and suddenly one clear sound comes through. That's what you felt like to them. I'm getting that you didn't try to do anything to make this happen. You weren't trying to impress them. You weren't trying to pull them in. You weren't chasing, pushing, or forcing connection. And that's actually what made it stronger. You just existed as you are. And I feel like that caught them off guard, because I'm sensing this person is used to figuring things out in their head. And they analyze, they overthink, they try to control how they feel. But with you, they didn't get that chance. Their body reacted first, their chest, their stomach, their breath. I'm seeing moments where they felt calmer around you without knowing why, or suddenly more aware of themselves, maybe even a little exposed, like something inside them was being gently touched without permission. Not in a scary way, more like vulnerable. I feel like they notice their heart rate change, their thoughts slow down, their emotions rise to the surface when you were nearby. And that confused them because nothing obvious was happening on the outside. Like you weren't saying much, you weren't doing much, but something was happening inside them. I'm getting the sense that your energy felt very real to them, very grounded, very present. And for someone who's been living in their head for a long time, that can feel intense, almost intimate. It's like standing next to a fire. You don't have to touch it to feel the warmth, you just know it's there. That's how you felt to them. I also feel like part of what unsettled them was how natural it felt. There was no build up, no effort, no performance, just an instant sense of something is different here. And they weren't prepared for that. I'm sensing that some of you listening are very emotionally aware, but you don't always realize how strongly your presence affects others. You may think you're being quiet, neutral, even invisible at times, but your energy doesn't hide. I'm seeing that this person felt you before they understood you. They felt safe before they knew why. They felt seen before you ever said a word. And that's powerful because when a connection starts in the body, it's much harder to ignore. You can talk yourself out of thoughts, you can dismiss ideas, but you can't easily dismiss what your body feels. That's why this stayed with them. That's why they kept replaying moments in their head later, trying to understand what it was about you that made them feel that way. And this is only the beginning of what they're starting to realize, because what's slowly becoming clear to them now is that you don't just notice them on the surface, you see them in a way most people never do, and you do it quietly without making a show of it. You notice the small things, the things people usually overlook, the shift in their mood when they're trying to act normal, the pause before they speak when something is weighing on them, the way they go quiet instead of asking for help, the way they pull back when they're overwhelmed, not because they don't care, but because they care too much. And the important part here is how you respond to that. You don't interrogate them. You don't demand explanations. You don't put them on the spot or make them feel exposed. You don't say what's wrong in a way that feels invasive or heavy. You just notice. You give them space when they need it. You stay present without hovering. You allow them to be exactly where they are emotionally without trying to fix them or rush them through it. That does something to a person, because this is someone who deep down is used to being misunderstood, used to people misreading their silence as disinterest, used to their complexity being ignored or simplified, used to feeling like they have to explain themselves just to be accepted. With you, they don't feel that pressure. They feel seen without being exposed. And it's like you're saying without words, I see you exactly as you are, and you don't need to perform for me. That creates a kind of emotional safety they're not familiar with. And that's why this connection started sinking in so deeply for them, even before they understood what it was. Because safety isn't loud. Safety doesn't rush. Safety feels calm, steady, grounded. I'm seeing this like, imagine someone who's been holding their breath for a long time without realizing it. And then suddenly around you, they exhale. Not dramatically, just naturally. Like their body finally realizes it doesn't need to stay tense. That's the effect you have. You also remember things about them, little details they might not even realize they shared. Something they said once in passing, a preference, a worry, a story from their past, and when it comes back up later, they're surprised you remembered. Not because they think you're trying to impress them, but because it tells them something important. It tells them they matter. It tells them they're being listened to. And for someone who spends a lot of time inside their own head, that means everything. They start to notice how different it feels to be around you compared to others. How they don't have to explain themselves as much, how they don't feel judged, how their emotions don't feel like a burden in your presence. I'm seeing that they may even feel a bit exposed by this at first. Not in a bad way, but in a way that makes them aware of how guarded they've been with everyone else. Because when someone sees you clearly, it brings up questions. Why do they understand me like this? How do they know? Why does this feel so easy? And those questions linger. What's interesting is that you probably don't even realize how deeply you're doing this. For you, it's natural. It's just who you are. You're observant, you're intuitive, you're emotionally intelligent, you notice patterns, you feel shifts in energy, you're not prying, you're paying attention, and that's rare. So over time, this person starts associating you with comfort, with clarity, with a sense of being grounded. They start feeling like they can be more themselves around you, even if they don't fully understand why yet. They may not say it out loud, they may not even consciously acknowledge it at first, but inside something changes. They feel less alone, they feel understood, they feel like someone finally gets them without needing them to explain everything. And that's when the bond starts moving from curiosity into something deeper, because being seen at that level isn't something people forget easily. And this is where the confusion really starts for them. Not because they didn't feel anything, but because they felt too much, too quickly, without a clear reason. At first, they didn't turn toward you with certainty. They turned inward. They started questioning themselves, quietly, privately, in moments when they were alone or when things finally slowed down enough for their thoughts to catch up. Why do I feel calmer around them? Why does my body relax when they're near? Why does it feel like they understand me without me explaining anything? And the one that unsettled them the most. Why does this feel familiar? This wasn't a surface level attraction. It didn't feel new in the normal sense. It didn't feel like excitement mixed with nerves the way crushes usually do. It felt deeper, older, like something they recognized rather than discovered. And that's what confused them, because they couldn't trace it back to a moment. There wasn't one big conversation, no dramatic interaction they could point to and say, that's when it started. It just was. Quietly present, steady, growing without effort. They may not have admitted this to themselves right away. In fact, I feel like they tried not to think about it at first. They brushed it off, told themselves they were reading too much into it, told themselves it was just comfort, just coincidence, just timing, but their body kept responding anyway. They noticed how they felt lighter after being around you, how their thoughts softened, how things that usually bothered them didn't feel as heavy when you were in the picture, and that didn't make sense to them because nothing had technically changed in their life except you. I'm seeing them replaying small moments, the way you looked at them, the way you listened, the way you didn't push. And each time they replayed it, that same calm returned. That's when the confusion deepened, because part of them knew this wasn't one-sided. They could feel it wasn't just you seeing them. They were feeling you too. Your presence, your care, your attention, even when you weren't physically there, not in a dramatic or overwhelming way, more like a quiet awareness, like a background warmth they couldn't turn off. And that scared them a little, because feeling something mutual without talking about it means there's no clear rule book, no label, no structure. It's harder to control. So instead of running toward it, they paused. They observed themselves, watched their reactions, noticed how their mood shifted when your name crossed their mind, noticed how they became more aware of their own emotions, their own needs, their own loneliness. You acted like a mirror without trying to. And mirrors make people uncomfortable before they make them honest. I'm sensing that deep down, on a level they didn't have words for yet, they recognize the bond. Not in a romantic fantasy way, not in an idealized way, in a grounded, felt sense of like, this person matters, like this connection isn't random, like something is happening here and I can't ignore it forever. They didn't rush to conclusions, they didn't label it right away, but they started protecting it, even if only internally. They became more aware around you, more careful, more present. And that's because when someone feels something real, even before they understand it, they instinctively don't want to damage it. They may have acted normal on the outside, even distant at times, but inside they were adjusting, making space, letting something unfamiliar settle. And that's the thing about this kind of connection. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up as a quiet question that keeps returning. Why does this feel like home? And once that question appears, it doesn't leave easily. What started happening after that was subtle, but it was steady. This person didn't suddenly change their life or make dramatic moves. What changed was the inside of them, the part most people never see. Because there's a lot of mental noise around them. Overthinking, worry, running scenarios in their head, playing out conversations that haven't even happened yet. Their mind rarely feels quiet. It's always working on something, trying to solve something, trying to stay ahead of pain or disappointment, and then you showed up. Not as a solution, not as someone trying to fix them, just as yourself. And something in them slowed down. They may not have noticed it immediately, but their body did. Their breath got deeper around you, their shoulders dropped, their jaw unclenched. Even if they didn't say much, even if they stayed reserved, something inside them stopped bracing for impact. It's like when you walk into a room and realize the background noise you were used to suddenly isn't there anymore. You don't react right away. You just feel relief. That's what your energy brought into their inner world. I'm sensing that this person carries a lot silently. They don't always talk about what's weighing on them. They try to be strong, independent, capable, but inside there's anxiety, a constant alertness, a sense of having to hold everything together alone. And when they were around you, that pressure eased. Not because you distracted them, not because you entertained them, but because you didn't add to the noise, you didn't demand anything from them, you didn't rush them or pull at them emotionally. You gave them space to just exist. And for someone whose mind is usually crowded, that feels rare, almost sacred. I'm seeing moments where they felt calmer simply sitting near you or being in the same space or even thinking about you later on. Moments where their thoughts didn't spiral as fast, where their worries didn't feel as loud. They didn't consciously connect the dots at first. They didn't say, oh, this person is calming me. They just noticed that when you were involved, things felt easier to handle. Even their problems didn't feel as overwhelming. It's like your presence softened the sharp edges of their thoughts, gave them a place to rest mentally, even if just for a moment. And that's powerful because calm doesn't come easily to people like this. Calm usually feels earned, temporary, fragile. But with you, it felt natural, effortless. I'm sensing that you didn't try to ground them intentionally. You didn't coach them through their feelings. You didn't give advice unless asked. You didn't tell them to relax. You just stayed steady. And steadiness has a way of regulating chaos without saying a word. Over time, this started changing how they experience their own emotions. They became more aware of how tense they normally are, how much they carry, how rarely they feel truly at ease. And that awareness didn't come with judgment, it came with relief because now they knew what was possible. I'm also getting that when they weren't around you, they noticed the contrast, the return of the noise, the tightness, the restlessness, and that made them realize something important. You weren't just a moment of calm, you represented a different state of being. That realization didn't hit them all at once. It unfolded slowly, quietly, in small realizations spread across days or weeks. But it stayed with them. They began associating you with peace, with safety, with a sense of being grounded, not in a boring way, in a stabilizing way. And that's when the bond deepened without either of you trying to make it happen. Because when someone helps you breathe again, even without knowing they're doing it, you don't forget them. You don't easily replace that feeling. You become a reference point, a reminder of what calm feels like. And that's when they started realizing that whatever this connection is, it isn't just emotional, it's regulating. It's stabilizing, it's something their nervous system recognizes as safe. And once that happens, the connection moves beyond curiosity into something much harder to ignore. This is where the shift really takes place, not outwardly, not in obvious actions, but internally where things are much more honest. They didn't decide to think about you. It just started happening. Your presence began showing up in their mind at random moments, quiet moments, in between tasks, when they were alone with their thoughts, when they were stressed, when something didn't go right in their day. Even when things were going fine, like you weren't forcing your way into their thoughts, you weren't doing anything dramatic to stay on their mind. You simply appeared. Like a familiar song playing softly in the background that you don't consciously put on, but somehow it's there. At first, they didn't question it, they just noticed that you crossed their mind more than expected. A small thought here, a memory there, the image of your face, the way you looked at them, the calm they felt when you were around. And then it started happening more often. They'd be dealing with stress, and suddenly thinking about you made things feel manageable. They'd feel overwhelmed, and the idea of you brought them back into their body, back into the moment. You became a grounding point in their mental world, not in an obsessive way, not in a chaotic way, in a steady way. It's like when someone has a place they go to mentally when life feels heavy, a quiet spot, a pause. That's what you became for them. I'm sensing that they didn't talk about this with anyone. This was private, something they noticed but didn't label, something they felt but didn't explain. They might have caught themselves thinking, why do I feel calmer when I think about them? Or why does remembering them slow me down? And those questions lingered. What's important here is that this wasn't about fantasy. They weren't imagining futures or creating stories. It was much simpler than that. Your energy brought them back to themselves. When their thoughts started spiraling, you anchored them. When their anxiety rose, thinking about you softened it. When they felt disconnected, remembering you made them feel present again. That's not accidental. I'm seeing that this person's mind is usually busy, crowded, always processing something, and you became one of the few thoughts that didn't add weight. You didn't demand attention, you didn't create pressure, you felt steady. So without realizing it, they started returning to that feeling again and again. They might not have called it missing you. They might not have named it longing. It was more like their system recognizing something, regulating something safe, and safety is magnetic. I'm sensing moments where they caught themselves smiling slightly without knowing why, or feeling a sense of ease wash over them for no clear reason, or suddenly feeling more grounded after a stressful interaction, and later realizing it was because you crossed their mind. That realization didn't come with panic, it came with quiet surprise. Because they didn't try to create this bond, they didn't plan it, it formed naturally, and that made it feel real. They might have even tried to distract themselves from it at times, stayed busy, focused on other things, but your presence didn't disappear, it just waited. And the more they noticed this pattern, the harder it became to dismiss. Because when someone becomes a place of calm in your mind, they start to matter in a deeper way. They become associated with balance, with clarity, with emotional relief. And that's when reflection started setting in. They began noticing how different they felt before you came into their awareness compared to after, how heavy things used to feel, how restless their thoughts were, how alone they felt in their own head. And now, even in difficult moments, there was something else present. A reminder that calm exists, that understanding exists, that connection exists through you. I'm seeing that this made them more aware of their emotions, more honest with themselves, less numb, less shut down. You didn't distract them from their inner world. You softened it enough for them to sit with it. And that's a powerful thing to do without trying. They didn't fall into this consciously. It unfolded on its own, thought by thought, moment by moment, until one day they realized something had changed. Thinking about you wasn't just pleasant, it was stabilizing. And once someone becomes a stabilizing presence in your inner world, they're no longer just someone you met. They become part of how you regulate yourself. And that's when the connection starts moving into territory that can't be undone or ignored anymore. Because something else began happening alongside all of this, something quieter but even more powerful. You started reflecting them back to themselves in a way they weren't used to. You didn't do this by pointing things out or analyzing them. You didn't sit them down and explain who they are. You didn't try to change them or guide them or correct them. You just responded to them as they are. And that's the part that landed so deeply. When they spoke, you actually listened, not just to the words, but to what was underneath them. When they were quiet, you didn't rush to fill the space. You allowed the silence to exist without making it awkward. When they showed emotion, even subtly, you didn't flinch or pull away. You met them where they were, and through that, they began seeing themselves more clearly. I'm seeing this like someone standing in front of a mirror for the first time that doesn't distort them. A mirror that doesn't exaggerate flaws or blur edges. A mirror that simply reflects what's already there, honestly and gently. That's what you became for them. They felt understood without needing to explain their backstory, known without having to justify their feelings, accepted without having to earn it, and that's rare. Because this person is used to being misunderstood, used to people projecting onto them, used to being told they're too quiet, too sensitive, too complicated, or not enough of something. With you, none of that existed. Like, you didn't label them, you didn't box them in, you didn't assume, you let them be. And in that space, they relaxed into themselves. They felt permission to be real. I'm seeing that when they were around you, they didn't feel the need to perform or protect themselves as much. They didn't feel like they had to explain why they are the way they are. They didn't feel like they needed to hide parts of themselves to be accepted. You reflected back their best qualities without flattering them, their depth, their thoughtfulness, their sensitivity, their intelligence, their emotional awareness. And because it wasn't forced, it felt real. They started recognizing parts of themselves they had forgotten about, parts they had buried to survive, parts that didn't feel welcome in other spaces. Around you, those parts felt safe to come back online, and that's not something people experience often. I'm also seeing that you didn't rush them into growth or change. You didn't push them to be better or heal faster. You let them unfold at their own pace. That patience mirrored something important back to them. It showed them that they don't need to be fixed, that they aren't broken, that who they are right now is already enough. And for someone who spent a lot of time feeling like they need to improve themselves to be loved, that realization is emotional. It shifts something fundamental inside. Like, they started feeling more whole around you, more integrated, less fragmented, like all the parts of themselves were allowed to exist in the same room. And that's when self-awareness deepened. They became more conscious of their patterns, their fears, their strengths, not in a harsh or critical way, in a gentle, curious way. Because you weren't judging them, they stopped judging themselves as harshly. You became a reference point for how they want to feel in connection, how they want to show up, how they want to be treated. And that realization stayed with them even when you weren't physically present. They noticed how different it felt to interact with others afterward, how conversations felt more shallow, how they felt less seen, how they felt more guarded again. And the contrast was clear. You didn't just see them, you reminded them of who they are when they're safe. And that's not something people forget. Because when someone reflects you back to yourself with kindness, without trying to change you, without trying to own you, without trying to control you, it creates a bond that goes far beyond surface connection. It creates recognition. And once someone recognizes themselves more clearly because of you, the connection isn't just about attraction or comfort anymore. It becomes meaningful. It becomes personal. It becomes something that quietly reshapes how they see themselves and what they now know is possible in connection. And then at some point, something clicks for them. Not all at once, not like a dramatic realization where everything suddenly makes sense. It's quieter than that, slower, more like a truth settling into place after being resisted for a while. They start noticing a pattern, or they notice how they feel before interacting with you and how they feel after. And they notice how conversations with others can leave them feeling drained, tense, or overstimulated, while time with you leaves them clearer, lighter, more centered. That's when it becomes obvious to them that you don't bring chaos into their life. You bring clarity. You don't add noise to their already busy mind. You don't create emotional confusion. You don't pull them into drama, uncertainty, or emotional games. You calm things down. And this matters more to them than they probably expected, because this is someone who has lived with inner turbulence for a long time. Even when things look fine on the outside, their inner world can feel restless, heavy, disorganized. They're used to relationships and connections that take energy from them instead of giving anything back. So with you, it's different. They don't feel like they have to brace themselves. They don't feel like they have to perform or manage your emotions. They don't feel emotionally exhausted after being around you. They feel restored. I'm seeing this like someone who's been walking against the wind for years, and suddenly they step into a place where the air is still. They don't realize how tired they were until the resistance is gone. That's what your presence does. You don't overwhelm them. You don't crowd their emotional space. You don't demand constant reassurance or attention. You allow things to breathe. And because of that, their nervous system starts associating you with relief. They begin to feel more like themselves around you, more balanced, more grounded, more at ease in their own skin. And that's when appreciation deepens. At first, they may have thought, I like how I feel around them. Then it becomes, they make things feel easier. And eventually it turns into, this person genuinely affects my well-being. That's a big realization, because it means you're not just someone they enjoy, you're someone who positively impacts their inner state. They start realizing that after spending time with you, they think more clearly, they respond to life differently, they feel less reactive, less anxious, less scattered. Even their problems don't feel as overwhelming. And that's when they understand something important. You don't drain them, you restore them. That realization carries weight, because restoration isn't something they come across often. They've had connections that felt exciting but exhausting, intense but destabilizing, emotional but chaotic. You are the opposite of that, and your presence feels like a reset, a return to center, a reminder of what calm feels like. And once they see that, it changes how they relate to you internally. They become more protective of the connection, more mindful of how they show up, more aware of what they feel. Because losing access to something that stabilizes you feels unthinkable. I'm sensing that they also start feeling grateful, not in a surface level way, in a deep, quiet way that doesn't always need words. Grateful that you exist in their life. Grateful that they cross paths with you, grateful that someone like you sees them without trying to change them. And gratitude has a way of turning into something deeper when it's tied to healing. They begin realizing that you've helped them heal parts of themselves without even trying to. Parts they didn't know how to reach on their own, parts that felt tense, guarded, or shut down, not because you fixed them, but because your presence made healing possible. You showed them simply by being who you are that connection doesn't have to hurt, that closeness doesn't have to mean chaos, that intimacy doesn't have to come with anxiety. And that realization settles in slowly, but once it does, it stays. They may not say it out loud, they may not even fully understand it yet, but deep down they know something important. You make their life feel better, more balanced, more manageable, more real. And when appreciation reaches that level, it naturally starts transforming into something deeper, something rooted, something meaningful. Because people don't just fall for how someone looks or what they say, they fall for how someone makes them feel inside, and you made them feel whole. And once that happens, there's no going back to how things were before. That's the part they didn't expect. This connection didn't just pass through their life, it stayed. It left a mark. Because once someone experiences what it feels like to be seen at that level, they can't unsee it. They can't pretend they didn't feel it. They can't go back to shallow connections and convince themselves it's enough. I'm sensing that this connection changed them in a quiet but permanent way. Not in a dramatic world-flipping sense, more like an internal shift, a recalibration, something inside them realigned. Even if there's distance now, even if circumstances are unclear, even if timing doesn't make sense yet, what they felt with you became a reference point. They now know what real emotional safety feels like. They know what it's like to be understood without explaining, to be accepted without performing, to be met without being pulled apart. And once someone knows that, their standards change. I'm seeing that they may have tried to go back to normal life after crossing paths with you. Same routines, same people, same distractions, but something felt off. Conversations felt flatter, interactions felt noisier, connections felt rushed or surface level. Not because those things were suddenly bad, but because they were no longer enough. You showed them a different depth. You showed them that connection can feel calm and deep at the same time, that closeness doesn't have to come with anxiety, that being seen doesn't have to feel exposing or unsafe. And now they carry that knowing with them. They may not talk about it. They may not even consciously think about it every day, but it lives in them, in how they respond to others, in what they tolerate, in what they no longer settle for. I'm also seeing moments where they catch themselves comparing feelings, not people, feelings. How did I feel with them? Why doesn't this feel the same? What's missing here? And the answer keeps pointing back to you. Not because you're perfect, not because the connection was flawless, but because it was real. It touched something true in them. And once truth is felt, it can't be undone. I'm sensing that even if they tried to rationalize it, even if they told themselves it was just timing or circumstance or imagination, their body remembers. Their heart remembers. Their nervous system remembers. They remember how calm felt. They remember how safe felt. They remember how whole felt. And those memories don't fade easily. This doesn't mean they're stuck. It doesn't mean they're frozen in the past. It means they've grown. They've expanded. They've been shown something meaningful. And you were the one who showed them. I'm seeing that this realization brings both gratitude and longing. Gratitude for the experience. Longing because once you've tasted something nourishing, you don't forget the flavor. They may wonder if they'll ever feel that way again, if they'll ever find that level of understanding again. And deep down, they know the answer matters because now they know what's possible. They know connection doesn't have to be chaotic. Love doesn't have to hurt. Being close doesn't have to mean losing yourself. And whether they consciously admit it or not, they associate that awakening with you. Your presence didn't just comfort them, it expanded them. You didn't just calm their chaos, you changed how they understand connection itself. And that kind of impact doesn't disappear with time or distance. It settles in, it becomes part of who they are now. So even if paths shift, even if silence exists, even if life pulls in different directions, the imprint remains. They can't unfeel what they felt. They can't unknow what they now know. They can't unsee what you showed them. Because once someone experiences being truly seen, they carry that awareness forward. And it quietly reshapes everything that comes after. And somewhere inside them, they know it started with you. And before we close this out, I want you to sit with this for a moment. Some connections don't come into our lives to stay forever in the same form. Some come to wake us up, to remind us what real presence feels like, to show us what's possible when we're truly seen and truly felt. If this spoke to you, if you felt this in your body or your heart, let me know you were here. Drop "seen" in the comments. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to Lindsay Speaks, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay with me. There's more coming.